Hello YouTube, I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. Pardon my coughing. I'll try to mute it. We have a question here from YouTube user EXOL, who asks us, "Hi, Mr. Vincent White. My question is settlement cumulative? Like, if there are 3 charges, do you get a settlement for each charge? I'm preparing for mediation. It's been a long journey. I have been watching your videos for months. Really glad you help people for free. Wish you could be my lawyer." Well, I hope you have great representation locally. Local attorneys are always going to not always. Local attorneys will generally be cheaper than our firm. We did hear some things about attorneys in a couple different areas, including like Oregon and Maryland, where the local attorneys are actually bizarrely more expensive than national firms. I don't know if that's generally true. I think that's pretty rare. One would think a firm flying attorneys around the country would always be more expensive than a firm that's already in an area, but who knows? Who knows what's going on? Who knows why they're expensive? It's not my job to police their fee structure. But anyways, I hope you have great local representation. I hope they are cheaper than us. Now, to your question. If there are 3 charges, do you get a settlement for each charge? So the simple answer under just the federal laws is going to be no. You get 1 damages calculation for all your damages. However, let's immediately give 2 exceptions to that. So you would use our damages calculation playlist, and that would kind of teach you about the different forms of damages, which we don't really have time to do here, but we'll do a quickie version here. You've got economic damages, emotional damages, and punitive damages under the federal laws. Now, in different jurisdictions, so different states, you're also going to have state and local laws. Those state and local laws are all different. They're drafted differently. They have different damages provisions, and each jurisdiction is going to have different rules and different ways that damages get calculated. So right off the bat, you got to check with local counsel. You got to know that's different. Under the federal laws themselves, all of your claims are going to generally share the same pool of damages. Listen, this is all layperson advice. These are not definitive legal answers. This is shorthand, simplified to help somebody who's not an attorney try to understand what's going on. So generally, all of your claims are going to share the same pool of economic and emotional damages. Now, your punitive damages can be different under the federal laws. Those are going to flow from only the retaliation claim, and they might not be available in settlement talks, or they might, depending on the defense counsel you're dealing with and the jurisdiction you're dealing with, and how strong your case is and how much leverage you have, right? But the punitive damages would be set aside purely for the retaliation claims under the federal laws. Now, here's the thing. Wherever you're litigating, there's a good chance you might be litigating under federal, state, and local laws. All 3 sets of laws at the same time, or at least under federal and state, depending where you are. There's certainly places where you might just do the federal. There's even places where you might just do the state. That occasionally happens, right? Excuse me. Now, in areas where the damages are calculated very differently under the state and local laws as compared with the federal, there's a decent chance that the damages for those claims might be negotiated separately or thought of separately. In mediation, this is probably not going to be the case. They're probably going to be talking global settlements for all the claims, right? So they're going to often come to you and be like, hey, we'll offer you, like, you might open with a demand for $1 million, and they might tell you, no, but we would offer you a global settlement of like $100,000. More realistically, they would start at 20, and you'd have to fight them to get them where you want them to be. But like, let's just go quick and easy here. You're at $1 million, they're at 100,000. Now you can say, well, I would take 100,000 for the sexual harassment claim, but I'm not going to accept that 100,000 to settle the disability discrimination, the race discrimination, and the retaliation claims, right? It's a really bad situation. You have lots of claims. Their response would be like, oh no, we're not negotiating piecemeal, almost always. Like 99 times out of 100, that will be the response. We're not doing this piecemeal. It's global settlements only. Any settlement we offer is for all claims, a release of all claims. Now, you don't have to accept that, But the reality is, if you don't accept that, most defense counsel will end the negotiation because it generally does not serve their purposes or their client's purposes to negotiate piecemeal, to negotiate one claim at a time. That also doesn't necessarily make sense in how damages are usually calculated for most claims, right? So you don't have to go along, but they're probably going to feel forced to end the negotiation if you're trying to do one claim at a time. Your call, right? It depends on how badly you want to get the case settled and at what amount, and probably has something to do with what they're offering you, right? If they're coming to you and saying, hey, we'd offer you 20 grand, it's probably pretty easy for you to say, well, I'm not interested in this negotiation anymore. If you're at $1 million and they're at 600,000, well, you might be a little less eager to walk away from that table, right? I'm not saying you're going to cave and take 600, but you might, in the back of your head, say to yourself, well, if we split the difference, I get 800K, and that's not too shabby, right? I don't know what you feel about it, right? So a lot of times, people will have that global negotiation because they're aware that the piecemeal negotiation of claims is just not available with defense counsel. And honestly, I will tell you, I can think of one situation where there was a piecemeal negotiation that I worked on, and it was very simple. My client felt that he had some additional claims that nobody but my client thought were valuable, like at all. My client had some very real claims. My client had been wronged, had a very real case, and everybody agreed about that, right? Like I knew that I had a good case. I had not, I had only accepted the good case, right? The client was like, I want to bring, I'll just make some stuff up. I'm not talking about this individual client. I'm not going to identify, obviously, and I'm not going to talk about the actual claims. Let's say the client was like, oh, I want to sue for fraud in the inducement, breach of contract, defamation, and also I want racial discrimination and retaliation. And I was just like, okay, well, those first three things you said are garbage claims that have no value, in my opinion. You can go hire another attorney on them, but you can't hire me. I'm not going to take those claims. I'm not going to fund those claims. However, your race discrimination and your retaliation claims are super real, super viable. I would love to represent you on those. And so the client was like, okay, I'll hire you on those. If that's all I can hire you on, I'll hire you on those two claims, and I'll go hire another attorney for my other claims. And then he didn't. For whatever reason, he probably couldn't obtain an attorney for those other claims. So he didn't. So then settlement comes around, and then the defendants are like, oh my God, we want to offer you X amount of dollars. Like, we'll just make up a number. Like, we want to offer you 400 grand. And, I go to my client, I was like, listen, that 400 grand's not bad. Like, you could potentially win more than that at trial, but the 400 grand is, it's a pretty solid non-insulting offer given the way damages are calculated, your economic damages, your emotional damages. Like, in this situation, given what went on and the circumstances surrounding it, like, this is it's a decent offer. You don't have to take it, but if you want to take it, you absolutely could. It's reasonable. It's a reasonable, non-insulting offer in the realm of reality for this case. My client was like, okay, that's good advice. I will like to accept it. But remember, you can't settle those other claims. I was like, I don't have any other claims for you. Like, I know that you have other claims that you feel you have, feel you've accrued here, but you didn't hire anyone to pursue them. You're not pursuing them. Like, I'm not settling any, like, I'm settling the case. And my client's like, yeah. But I mean, when we settle, no global settlement. Actually, I think I said to him, I was like, so like, you think you have these claims, you're going to have to do a carve out. If you want to settle your case, you're going to have to do a carve out for those claims if you think you're actually going to pursue them. And you haven't pursued them, and it's been whatever, like 9 months. So like, on one hand, either stop fooling around and pursue them, or just realize you're not going to pursue them, and they're not, like, nobody thinks they're valuable, right? So the client was like, okay, settle the case with a carve-out. And defense counsel kind of went back and forth and hemmed and hawed. It was like, listen, I don't want my clients to just get sued again, and I'm being an asshole. And I'm like, yeah, you do, you get paid again. And he's doesn't think I'm funny, and we're going back and forth. And then finally he was like, those claims are shit. I was like, I'm not saying anything about my client's claims. I don't know if those claims are good or bad. He's like, really, Vince? You wouldn't take them? Vince White, I know, takes money. He sees a claim, it's worth money. He takes it. That's the Vince White I know. It's employment law. It's what you do. Right? If I see a med mal claim, I don't take that because I'm not good at med mal. I call up my source at Duffy and Duffy, and I say, hey, you're the med mal experts. Why don't you talk to this person, see if you can help this person, right? Because that's not what I do. I'm not good at that. But to this attorney's point, he was like, listen, this is right in your wheelhouse. He's got these claims. He talked about him at his deposition. He brought them up in the mediation, even though you told him not to. He won't shut up about these claims. And these claims are claims you could have taken. They're within the purview of what your firm is good at. So, why didn't you? You getting soft? You stupid now? I mean, honestly, I think he might have been like, I don't know, Vince, you getting dumber? Like, you were always dumb, but this would be a new thing for you, leaving money on the table. And I was like, listen, I didn't take them because I didn't take them. I'm making no statements about the quality of these claims. And he was like, bullshit. False. Those claims are junk. And I was like, all right, guy, you think these claims are such junk, why are you worried about them? He's like, oh, because he might, once he's got $400,000 or whatever it was, whatever the amount was, attorney's like, well, he might just hire an attorney. He'll be able to hire an attorney then. He won't need an attorney on contingency. He's going to go hire somebody on an hourly basis and waste my client's time. I was like, listen, you can get away from these claims or not. The claims that I have, like, we have a deal, but my client's not settling those other claims. And you can say whatever you want about them, but if they're junk claims, you should be able to get them dismissed real cheap and easy. You claim they're so worthless, they're so junky, then fine. What are you worried about, right? And he was like, fine, I'll go talk to my client. Took about 2 weeks, and they called up, and they were like, fine, we'll settle your claims. It's the only real claims anyways. We don't care about those other claims. Okay, your call. My client will take the deal. We're done. Get me the settlement agreement. Make sure the carve-out's in there. I'll review to make sure. Now, I remember this story very well, blow by blow, because it's so incredibly rare. And because it was so incredibly shocking that they just were like, yeah, these claims are such trash, we don't care if he sues us about these additional claims later on. That is not generally something that either an employer or defense counsel is open to, for obvious reasons, right? If you put things in context, they were handing him a big war chest, right? A couple $100,000 to go hire attorneys and just sue them into perpetuity and like grind everything up. And they just opted to take the risk of like, we don't care. These are real claims. We have real liability in these claims. We want the deal done. I'm not defending them. It's not my job to give them advice, right? My client wanted the deal. I got the card out for my client, so like, okay, well, I'm done here, you know? Now, I don't think that client ever was able to hire an attorney, which is surprising. Because there's always going to be an attorney who'll take your money. That's what I always say to people who get mad at attorneys for not taking their case. I'm like, what, you want somebody to take your money even though they think it's a trash case? Like, what? That's them conning you. That's a con job, right? Why don't you keep looking for an attorney who believes in you, believes in your case? Like, why are you mad that a given attorney doesn't? They looked at it, you explained the case, they heard the case, they were like, okay, assuming everything is exactly as you say, that case does not sound valuable to me, or sounds too high risk, or whatever the response is, right? And people get really mad. And my response is, yeah, what, do you want me to lie to you? And do you want these attorneys to be like, oh, well, you could just pay me like hourly for that case because I don't think it's valuable, like, or I think it's too high risk, or I just think, listen, it could win, but it's not something I can tie my firm's money up in, right? I think that level of honesty has real value, but it does really bother people, right? And people get very angry about it. But I was very surprised that he never, to my knowledge, pursued those claims. And excuse me, it's very rare that you would have a piecemeal settlement. And generally, it's rare that you would be at a mediation and be able to negotiate in a piecemeal. It's even rare that you'd be able to negotiate separate punitive damages. You can argue punitive damage should increase the totality of the sum, right? That global settlement sum. You can say, well, listen, there's going to be punitives here, and there's no doubt, and it's really well established. And like you can say you don't negotiate on the basis of those, but all you're doing in that situation is guaranteeing a trial, because I'm going to have to go to trial to secure the punitive damages. So, like, you can negotiate or not, but that's the choice you're facing, right? And you can negotiate those punitive damages potentially into the mediation, into the settlement, knowing full well that defense counsel is going to fight you every step of the way, but it's still going to be a global settlement. It's still going to be one number for the entirety of the case, all the claims, generally speaking. That is the standard in the industry. Anyways, I hope this helps, EXOL. I hope this answers your question. I wish you great success at your mediation. I hope that for whatever was done to you, you get paid, you are made whole, you have a fat check that you can take to the bank and say, well, that was an unpleasant experience, but at least I got this check. Like, subscribe, comment down below if this video was helpful, helps the channel to grow, and remember, almost everybody works. Everybody wins. Be smart out there.